If you guys want to know a little bit more background about the info of Jitai and a general overview of the manhwa, check out my last vid. It's a full recap of Fight Class 3. Now moving on to the video. Today's video will be discussing Jitai, the protagonist of the manhwa Fight Class 3. Jitai is an extremely interesting character that differs greatly from other protagonists of other school-related fighting manhwas. Like I mentioned previously, Jitai initially seems to display the cliches associated with many other protagonists of similar tropes, yet his transformation is what I believe really makes this manhwa shine compared to other manhwas. So Jitai ticks all the boxes of a stereotypical male protagonist in a fighting genre. Weak, he looks extremely frail, and he overall has no fighting experience. Hack's model of Jitai initially seems a little cartoonish, especially evident with the extremely ordinary face and hair. You can clearly see at the very start the renditions of Jitai and his friends are extremely cartoonish. I guess this reflects the atmosphere of the scene, light-hearted and a little bit innocent and naive, compared to the later chapters where there is more of a grim undertone to things. He looks a lot more sharper, more wilder and unhinged in all of his later appearances. What Hack transforms his character into is truly extraordinary. He sprinkles small interactions between Jitai and other characters that allude to a future individual that Jitai will become. This starts from very early, in fact the first chapter. There are two interactions, the dreams of Jitai's final moments with his sister and his interaction with the manager. It seems that his dreams are pretty reoccurring, with his thoughts exclaiming that it's the same dream again. It must be extremely disheartening being vividly reminded of your own failures every single day. This notion of weakness is further intensified by the manager offhandedly commenting that Jitai is frail like a girl. And this is where we see a sudden change in the art style. First of all, Jitai's expression looks frozen, and the background black, perhaps an indicator of his emotions. Darker colors are usually associated with something more sinister, and this perhaps alludes to the emotional turmoil that Jitai faces, being barraged with such comments. These comments can lead him to doubting himself and remembering his moments of weaknesses. And this thought process leads to his recurring dreams again of his sister, which only worsens his mood and intensifies his feelings of inferiority. We can also see a shift in the atmosphere with the mention of Daigak, his father, his source of animosity, fear and vitriol, and the mention of the no weight limit on the ground sparks hope within him. The path of martial arts is perhaps a stepping stone towards finding his sister. Jitai's relationship with Miria needs a lot of unpacking. In my opinion, it is pretty complex because there are so many polarizing scenarios in which we see Miria and Jitai. First of all, I would like to say this. Miria initially acts as a foil with Jitai. She is brutal and unforgiving, ruthless to Jitai's compassion, sense of justice and hesitation. She is not appalled to use shocking forms of violence to get her points across. Often, Jitai does not respond well to her use of violence, as seen when he tries to intervene in the brutal beating of Dongwon, and the first street fight that he gets himself into. The foil better differentiates Jitai's demeanor and personality and highlights his fall from the normal world as the manhwa progresses. I find it ironic that the more brutal character mellows out whilst the kind and more compassionate individual slowly becomes that foil. Now following that, let's delve more into the interactions between both of them. Miria is known to be very blunt, and her first lesson with Jitai does not go well for the both of them. Berating him for his fear of getting hit, she does not understand why he's like this, despite knowing that he has had no prior fighting experience. During the conversation between Miria and Jitai, we see Miria stating that he has to obey every single word, like a dog to its master. But Jitai resolutely refutes that, stating that he wants to be on equal standing to her, on par with her, in fact. Tragically enough, after we witness Jitai's unraveling on the hospital bed and his cries for his sister and his pleas to stop this violence, he finds himself, eventually, just a dog following orders, unable to live a life of freedom, as that is clearly taken a toll on the mind. To follow and obey is much simpler and less complex than to find things out for yourself, and hence he takes the easier but more detrimental route. It is no help that Jitai is also related to Daigak. Miria, having been scarred from Daigak's atrocities to her family and still suffering from the consequences till this day, often sees resemblances between the both of them. I mean, of course, father and son are alike in many ways. Yet this makes for some very disturbing encounters with Jitai. One of them being when she is in the cupboard, her mind flashes back to her hiding from Daigak, and when Jitai opens the door, she sees Daigak's face and lashes out, pinning him to the floor, her facial expression betraying an array of conflicting emotions. On the other hand, Miria reminds Jitai of his mum sometimes. Those small moments when they are working on different maneuvers, the more peaceful times when Jitai doesn't have to put his life on the line. He can just relax in the company of someone without a worry. It's sad to see how scarce these moments have come. Goofing around and just having a fun high school time is simply just a distant memory, reinforced by the shifting trajectory that is the Choi Young-jun fight. I find it a little bit twisted that Miria reminds Jitai of his mum, whilst Jitai reminds Miria of Daigak, and both of them were married. So maybe there is something to do with that down in the line. I'm not too sure, to be honest. Despite all the enjoyable encounters Jitai has had with Miria, she still terrorizes his mind. As he recounts back to Ji-hyang, his sister, Miria's voice and ghoul-like appearance always comes to mind, spitting how useless and worthless he is, urging him to take action, reminding him of his own fallacies, seeking for violence. Is that perhaps an extension of his own thoughts about himself? Who knows, to be honest. Everything starts with Ji-hyang, and everything ends with Miria. She has indeed made him stronger, but at what cost? Small but monumental moments start to accumulate, like little cracks in the glass pane. Contemplation and memory play big roles in shaping Jitai's decision. His desperation to find his sister. His own weaknesses always come to plague him, in the form of his younger self, uttering how useless and pathetic he is. Hyperfixated on such weaknesses, perhaps this is where we start to see Jitai lose his self-worth. Understanding that it was Miria who had him transferred over to Flight Class 1, the disparity between his classmates and himself only solidifies what he views himself as, pathetic and useless. Despite Miria's motivational speech to him, this notion of inferiority becomes increasingly apparent with each daily activity that the class does. As he falls further and further behind, and as the chasm widens, his sense of rationality and logic is twisted by the environment, and then his descent begins, with the tunnel. Jitai, furious at his own pathetic state, chooses rage instead of fear. Fear reminds him of his reoccurring losses and his inadequacies in life. Fear reminds him of his sister, now long gone. Fear reminds him of his mother, now dead due to his hands. Fear, the most primal and overpowering emotion I believe humans feel, is simply a small grain of sand against the crashing waves that is Jitai's rage. Because if Jitai resorts to fear again, he believes that he will simply be a coward. He will be what his younger self always tells him, useless and pathetic. He has come so far and decided that this won't stop him. Hence, he scrapes his nails onto his bleeding face. Because the pain brings you back to reality, it grounds you against the overflowing waves of memories that seek to drag you down. And Jitai is drowning in those memories. I love the reoccurring motif of the ocean that Tuhak uses. In these times of despair or frustration, Jitai's mind is akin to a wild ocean with its turbulence and ferocity. It seeks to drown everything, and this is exactly what Jitai does. Unpacking the conversation between Jitai and Miria, when she is in the midst of beating Dongwon up, Jitai resolutely states that he wants no one to sacrifice themselves for him. This statement alone dictates much of the dilemma he has found himself in, and the vitriol and hate that accompanies such experiences. Believing himself to be worthless, he believes that his life's value is far below others. This destabilization of his psyche from such a thought is amplified by Maria telling him that in every fight he must put his life on the line. Fighting is not a game. It is kill or be killed. Such a belief molds itself to be cancerous to Jitai, fighting with reckless abandon. Maria's care is shrugged off, her assessing eyes knowing what's about to happen, yet doing nothing about it. And when Maria saves him, we can see the damaging impact such a belief has on his mind. Crying to himself, his obsession with death leads him to lash out, cursing Maria for saving him. Reminiscing to the more peaceful times with his family, he then does a complete 180. He contemplates death, as he remembers rolling over the corpses, their lives without a care in the world. They don't have to feel what he's feeling. They don't have to see what he is seeing. They don't have to live what he is living. And then his hand reaches for her neck, parallel to her reaching for his, a few chapters or a few moments that we talked about beforehand. Blinded by his insanity, the only thought racing through his head is, why did Maria save him? After talking so much about putting one's life on the line, why did she contradict herself and do something that went beyond her beliefs? Jitai fails to realize that there is one simple answer. It's simply because she cares for him. Despite her aloof behavior, Maria views Jitai as more than just a tool. There's a real connection between them, and that pushes her to go to lengths that exceed her own creed. Moving on, under this veil of insanity, Jitai still remains firm in his beliefs. As Yang Ki-hyun pointed out, an individual's beliefs are extremely hard to fake, much harder than emotions. Even the best facades still have their flaws, and amidst the violence and bloodshed of Lim Hyang-chol and the rest of the gang, we see Jitai utter his beliefs, his views about these people. So blinded by their sense of strength, they choose weaker individuals to bully and violate. And often, one individual would be the one to enact the violence while the others watch, content to let the hurt and trauma of the victims drift away in the wind. They fail to realize, they cannot comprehend the pain of fighting. And when the victim's pain and suffering is redirected towards them, they start begging and pleading to stop, not understanding that they've ignored the pleas of their victims, caught in a similar but more tragic scenario. Parallel to Okdong grabbing on Hyang Chol's shirt, begging him to stop, the girl is seen crying her eyes out. These people don't deserve his mercy. Their penitence is understanding their victim's pain. It is to fight. It's clear that Jitai despises these people with a passion, yet he refers to them and himself with using us. Perhaps Jitai can realize the extent to which he has fallen. Perhaps he has understood that he is just like them. For sinners like them, fighting is a means to an end. There comes no good in fighting. Only death awaits them. As his body crumbles and the mind deviates away from his true self, as he continues upon a path only stained with tragedy, we'll delve into the mind of a now broken Jitai, on the cusp of enlightenment. Floating upon the raft in the ocean, the calmness of the sea mirrors Jitai's facade of ignorance, believing himself to be free, fervently choosing the safer route. But once again, he is confronted by his dark past, and as he banishes the more innocent parts of himself, he finally feels free. Now we see Jitai fully accepting the individual he has become, striving for vengeance, yet also plagued by the burden of a haunting decision that became the catalyst to his own undoing. But he feels more complete, and his previous insanity feels a bit more in tune, a bit dimmed down and controlled. And once again we see the motif of the ocean, yet unlike its previous turbulence, it seems calmer. He seems more in control. We see Sunny now, a victim to the waves, but what drags her down are not only the waves but the monster lurking underneath, the monster that is Jitai. After the immense battle, and amidst the chaos of the tunnel, we see Maria searching for him, and when she finally reaches him, we get a glimpse of his inner self. So much is conveyed in this single hug, so much pain and sadness, but also of longing and even love. He again touches Maria's lips, no doubt reminded of the traumatic experiences in the tunnel. For him, these lips were his savior. For him, These lips meant a defiance to her creed. On the verge of death, she saved him, and we can see memories of him looking at these lips in his home, on her hospital bed, and now here. He had always had a keen awareness of Mireille's contempt, her hatred towards him, due to him being the son of the man who brought her entire life to a standstill. Reflecting to all the moments with her, Jitai finally realizes he has always loved her, yet these feelings within him are now worthless. They hinder the greater goal in mind, killing his father and saving his sister, so he must kill his old self. He must erase the more innocent, the kinder and compassionate version. He knows that his old self is unable to bear the tragedy of the path that he's already undertaken. It is time to come to terms with this reality that he has found himself in, and with a punch that mirrors his father's, it is gone.